Welcome to Belly Button Window, the window into the world of Jimi Hendrix, revisiting the key people, important events, charting the growth of his music, his life and ideas, and, not forgetting plenty of stories in between. Episode 1. Despondent, Discovered and Departure. In this first installment, we will delve into period from June to September of 1966. 3 months which were undoubtedly decisive in determining the trajectory of Jimi's career, setting the course for what was to unfold over the next 4 years. We start in June with the formation of Jimi James and the Blue Flames, Linda Keith, and the critical role she played in supporting Jimi, which ultimately led to Chas Chandler signing Jimi as the talent that would launch his newfound music career, leading ultimately to Jimi's departure from America for England and the home of the British music invasion, blues revival, and the London of the swinging 60s, surrounding the events that unfolded. Much of what forms the Hendrix folklore is tainted by cliché, misinformation, or sensationalized exaggerations perpetuated by tabloids. Instead, as you shall see, it is a story firmly grounded in history, one that highlights the profound impact of an artist's transcendent talent on both popular culture and the world at large. At its core, this narrative is an exploration of the forces of love, creativity, and the human spirit. Let me take you back to June 1966, where our story unfolds. Jimi Hendrix, after spending several years honing his skills and performing on the Chitlin circuit, in backing bands for renowned artists such as the Isley Brothers, Little Richard, and later, Curtis Knight and the Squires, found himself at the metaphorical crossroad, feeling disenchanted with his musical career and started questioning his future. In the depths of his soul, Hendrix possessed an unwavering belief in his own extraordinary talent, even when the harsh realities of his everyday life seemed to suggest otherwise. He reached a pivotal moment where he realized that if he was destined to face hardship and struggle, he would do so on his own terms. With absolute conviction, he made the daring decision to embrace his unique musical vision, even if it meant facing potential hardship and uncertainty. Deep within his being, Hendrix knew that he possessed a talent that was yet to be fully discovered. This unshakable belief became the driving force behind his journey, propelling him forward despite the obstacles that lay ahead. As we embark on this tale, we witness the audacity and courage of an artist who was determined to carve his own path and leave an indelible mark on the world of music. Moreover, in an interview he revealed, "I had these dreams that something was going to happen, seeing the number 1966 in my sleep, so I just kept passing the time till then. I wanted my own scene, making my music, not playing the same riffs." And thus, Jimi Hendrix took a bold step and formed his very own band, Jimi James and the Blue Flames. That's Jimi spelt J-I-M-M-Y. The lineup consisted of Jimi on guitar, another talented guitarist named Randy California, a bassist named Randy, surname unknown, hailing from Texas, and an unidentified individual on drums. However, Jimi was never one to conform to societal norms. He lived life on his own terms, whether proclaiming that he hailed from a different planet, somewhere out in space, his eccentricities extending even to food, including his choice of breakfast, where he would indulge in spaghetti and garlic, sans sauce. During this time in New York, the music scene could be categorized into 2 distinct strands. On one hand, there were bars and dance halls featuring house bands that performed popular chart hits and standards. On the other hand, there was a burgeoning folk rock movement centered in Greenwich Village, with clubs like the upmarket Café Au Go-Go, and on the other end of the scale, Café War. Greenwich Village became the focal point of Jimi's efforts to secure gigs for himself and his band. Surprisingly, the Café War, though considered unfashionable, proved to be advantageous for Jimi. It provided a space for him to refine his material and perfect his stage presence, in front of an audience which, initially at least, was largely indifferent. Before long, Jimi and his band found themselves performing 6 nights a week at the Café War, reportedly earning $60 per night, as claimed by Jimi himself. However, his girlfriend at the time contested this figure, stating that it was more like $7 per night, to be divided among the band members. Nonetheless, Jimi started attracting attention and building influential connections within the village. Esteemed figures such as John Hammond Jr., Pete Seeger, Dylan and Bruce Springsteen became his acquaintances and supporters. Word of Jimi's extraordinary talent began to spread, not only among the local scene, but also among visiting English musicians who ventured to the village to witness the remarkable black guitarist who played an upside-down Stratocaster. He was already being hailed as the most skilled and visually captivating blues guitarist in the area. With such praise circulating, it was only a matter of time before something remarkable would occur. So, who was Linda Keith? As the story goes, Linda Keith, the girlfriend of Keith Richards, took a keen interest in Jimi. As the Rolling Stones went on tour, Jimi found himself frequently visiting Linda's hotel suite, grateful for the access she provided him to food, money and records. In the vibrant atmosphere of swinging London, Linda Keith had captured the heart of one of rock's young icons, Keith Richards. However, when the Rolling Stones embarked on another American tour in 1966, Linda's journey with Richards came to an end. It was an unwritten rule that girlfriends were not to travel with the band. Using Keith Richards' hotel suite as a base, Linda's passion for American blues grew further as she immersed herself in the bustling scene of Greenwich Village. Linda vividly remembers being captivated by Jimi's guitar skills during a show. At the end of the performance, she had a friend invite him to their table for a drink, and to her delight, he accepted. As the group engaged in casual conversation, Linda's fascination with Hendrix continued to grow. His polite and painfully shy demeanor set him apart from the typical rough-and-tumble bluesman she had expected to encounter. Linda made plans with Jimi meet again, hoping that somehow, someone from her extensive network of friends could offer him assistance. Hendrix was equally enamored by Linda. He was impressed by her assertiveness, and their friendship blossomed quickly. They would spend hours together, engrossed in conversations and listening to music at a place owned by friends of Linda they called the Red House, because the owners had adorned the entire house in red decor. Linda Keith in later interviews recalled, "I would play loads of music trying to motivate him, something he desperately needed. It seemed silly, me a middle-class white girl playing him the blues." Linda had connections with Chas Chandler, the bass player of the Animals, who were on the brink of embarking on their farewell tour of America. She also knew that after the tour, Chas would be seeking opportunities to manage and produce his own acts in collaboration with Animals manager Mike Jeffrey. Actually, there's much more to the story than that. Let me explain. It was thanks to Linda Keith's encouragement that Hendrix took the bold step of forming Jimi James and the Blue Flames. She explained, "I was interested in Jimi's music and desperately wanted to see it realized. He needed motivation and direction because, emotionally, he lacked confidence and was incredibly indecisive." She went on to say, "He was conflicted about his ethnic identity, and there was a great struggle between his musical roots and his desire to play the blues, while also aspiring to be a middle-class pop star. His personal life was just as fragmented," Keith continued. "He seemed afraid to commit to anyone honestly, and his life in Harlem was strictly off-limits to me." As close as their personal relationship was, she always maintained that she was never Jimi's girlfriend. They were never romantically involved. Instead, her intentions were purely altruistic. As it turns out, prior to Chas Chandler making that fateful decision to sign Hendrix, Linda had taken another record producer to the Café War to see Jimi, as she was desperate for someone to recognize Hendrix's talent before he gave up and joined another R&B package tour. After a brief look and listen, the producer shrugged his shoulders and walked out, dismissing Hendrix as just another black guitarist showing off nothing special. Linda Keith had played her trump card and arranged an audition for Jimi with someone she believed would immediately grasp his potential, the producer in question, none other than Andrew Loog Oldham. As manager and producer of the Rolling Stones, Oldham had quickly established himself as one of Britain's rising music entrepreneurs. He held Linda Keith's opinion in high regard, not only because of her association with Keith Richards, whom she had actually introduced to Oldham, but also because of their long-standing friendship from their school days in North London, long before the Rolling Stones achieved fame. After the Blue Flames performance, Linda herself was disheartened by Oldham's outright rejection. She did her best to console Hendrix, whose confidence was clearly shaken, and perhaps as a result was even more committed to assist. Hendrix's next opportunity came shortly after, with Seymour Stein, now president of Sire Records, another friend of Linda's. He wasn't as negative as Oldham, Linda Keith recalls, but he also didn't want to get involved. Keith was amazed by the response. Having faced rejection twice, Hendrix grew resigned to failure, and was somewhat annoyed that Keith had exposed him to such rejection. On the other hand, Keith was determined to persevere. She stated, "I couldn't believe these people couldn't see what I saw. To me, Jimi's talents were so evident." After unsuccessful attempts with Oldham and Stein, and purely by chance, While preparing to return to London, Linda met for the first time Chas Chandler, the bassist of The Animals, at a popular New York night spot. In their conversation, Chas mentioned his interest in trying his hand at record production. Immediately recognizing an opportunity, Linda suggested Jimi Hendrix to him and urged Chandler to see Hendrix for himself. Intrigued by Linda's conviction, Chandler agreed. Chas went to witness Jimmy's performance firsthand. As they say, Geordies from Newcastle aren't easily impressed, but when Chas saw Jimi play, he knew there was something special about him. In a later interview, Chandler revealed that he intended to cover the song Hey Joe in England to kickstart his career in the music business. To his astonishment, when he arrived at the Café Wah and descended into the basement club, what song was Jimi playing? Perhaps it was luck or perhaps destiny, but Hendrix was playing none other than Chas's favored Hey Joe. As Chas stood there, watching Jimi captivate the audience in the dimly lit venue, he thought, there must be a catch somewhere. How come no one had signed him yet? Well, he was right. There was a catch, and Chandler was about to find out. He questioned Jimi about his record deals, and while Jimi mentioned various people he had signed with, regrettably for both, he forgot to mention Ed Chalpin of PPX. Chas asked Jimi if he would be interested in coming to England, where he could have his own band and record his own music. Jimi played it cool, having heard countless promises before. In a later interview following Jimi's death, Chandler revealed that Hendrix questioned the point of going to England when they already had such great guitarists like Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck. In truth, Hendrix held Clapton in high regard as a guitarist, a fact that Chandler shrewdly used to his advantage. In the end, Chas sealed the deal by promising to personally introduce Jimi to Eric Clapton. Their meeting concluded with Chas mentioning that he would return after the Animals' American tour concluded in a couple of months' time. Chas returned to New York in early September, and although it took 4 days to locate Jimi, they met. This time he brought Mike Jeffrey along. Jimi was surprised to see Chas again, not fully believing all the talk about going to England in the first place. But there Chas was, as large as life, saying, "Let's go." That was the 9th of September. With no time to waste, they ordered Jimi's birth certificate, which arrived on the 19th, and his passport was issued in New York City on the 23rd of September. After which, Jimi and Chas departed forthwith from Kennedy International Airport in New York to London. It's fair to say that before Chas Chandler discovered him in July 1966, Hendrix, despite his remarkable talent and unwavering determination to succeed, was hindered by a lack of organizational skills. Leading Jimmy James and the Blue Flames, Hendrix appeared trapped in mediocrity and seemingly destined for obscurity. Although this makeshift ensemble occasionally included musicians like Randy California, later of Spirit, Jeff Baxter, later of the Doobie Brothers, and John Hammond Jr., the progress of the Blue Flames and that of their leader was stifled by low wages, limited cash flow, and poor morale. Hendrix's fortunes took a turn that afternoon in July when Chandler walked into the Café Wah. No longer relegated to the background until his novelty act was required, Hendrix would become transformed by Chandler into a bona fide star. Despite the absence of even a single recording to go by, Chandler envisioned Hendrix as the leader of an electrifying yet undefined new musical movement, and as we all know, he was to complete the transformation by forming the act known as the Jimi Hendrix Experience. So who was Chas Chandler? Brian Chas Chandler, the tall and husky bassist for The Animals, had achieved a level of success that many would envy. Though his group couldn't rival the fame of the Beatles or the Rolling Stones, they had garnered popularity and a global following. The roots of The Animals were deeply intertwined with the blues, the masterworks of Black American musicians that resonated with Newcastle's working class. Their idols were the outlaws of music, such as Howlin' Wolf and John Lee Hooker, whose captivating melodies thrived in neighborhood taverns and function halls, despite being excluded from the mainstream. The Animals embraced this rebellious image and soared to prominence during the British invasion of 1964 with their version of House of the Rising Sun, reaching the #1 spot on the charts amidst Beatlemania. In contrast to the Beatles, the Animals exuded a darker, rougher, and earthier aura. By the summer of 1966, with their 8th Billboard Top 40 hit, Don't Bring Me Down, the thrill of success had started to fade for Chandler. Although they never cracked the top 5 again, their progress was steady. However, financial abundance was elusive. None of the animals were wealthy, largely due to the absence of songwriting skills, which translated into a meager income from a modest 2% record royalty rate in Britain and 1% abroad, which had to be split among the 5 band members. You see, if you don't write your own material, you miss out on a substantial portion of the royalty pie. Touring was no different, often leading to debts once each Animals tour came to an end. Despite their weekly wages and a treasure trove of memories, Chas Chandler had little else to show for his hard work. Tired of the repetitive package tours and the endless travel on planes and buses, Chandler realized it was time for a change. Though his knowledge of the music industry was limited, he aspired to become a record producer. While he wasn't an exceptional instrumentalist, his decision stemmed from a desire to return to England and continue a career in music. Primarily, though, what drew Chandler to the idea of becoming a producer was the realization that the producer played a crucial leadership role, earning the trust of both the band and its management. With a sturdy and level-headed personality, a fondness for hard drinking, and an unwavering work ethic, Chandler embodied the quintessential man's man from the northeast of England, firmly rooted in family values. And so the preparation begins. After discovering the artist he wanted to produce, Chandler was eager to set his plans in motion. However, his progress hit a roadblock when initial attempts to locate Hendrix's birth certificate proved unsuccessful. Leon Dicker, the attorney and U.S. representative of the Animals' parent company, Yameta, encountered a frustrating situation. He was told by authorities that no such man named Jimi Hendrix had ever been born. Dicker responded tersely over the phone, insisting that Hendrix was standing right next to him in his office. Several weeks passed until one of Dicker's old college classmates from Seattle stepped in to help. They discovered a birth certificate filed under the name John Allen Hendrix, the name given to him by his mother when his father was away in the service. In the meantime, unwilling to waste time or opportunities, Chandler continued to push forward while formulating his strategy for London. In early September 1966, he took Hendrix to music publisher Abbie Schroeder, who recalled, "Hendrix didn't have a passport, didn't have a birth certificate, and didn't even have real shoes. We signed him up right away even though he didn't even have a thing on tape with him. I just knew something was going to happen with that guy." While awaiting Hendrix's passport, Chandler closely observed his performances, always searching for new ideas. Away from the stage, their bond grew stronger as Chandler and Hendrix got to know and understand each other. This bond would be tested during their crucial first weeks abroad, when Chandler had to deliver on his promises with action. Although the challenges ahead seemed daunting, Hendrix placed his complete trust in Chandler. He respected Chandler's authoritative nature and recognized his sincerity as genuine, which it indeed was. For Hendrix, liberation from the Blue Flames couldn't come soon enough. Financially struggling and surviving on meager pay and the kindness of a small group of supporters like Faye Pridgeon and Linda Keith, he was making only about $3 a day and was often went hungry. In many ways, for Jimi it must have been a sense of now or never, his last throw of the dice. Finally, with the passport secured and outstanding bills settled by Chandler, Hendrix was ready for England. And on that note we conclude our first episode, your window to the extraordinary life and times of Jimi Hendrix, and the people and events that conspired to unleash the creative explosion Hendrix was to become. Thank you for listening. I hope this first installment has whetted your thirst to learn more. If so, please subscribe to the Belly Button Window channel. That way you'll be notified as new episodes are published, which should be generally every other week. It also puts a smile on the faces of the team here when you show your appreciation. Please provide us with your ideas, questions, or any other thing you want to share. Dialogue is a two-way street. Stay tuned, as the story is only just beginning. Don't miss one of the truth, lies, and videotape on one of most exciting stories to be told, and the amazing life and times of Jimi Hendrix. Over the next couple of episodes, we shall be discussing all and everything: girlfriends, parties, the auditions, and forming the band, sitting in with Clapton, plus much, much more. And finally, until next time, in the inimitable words of Jimi, always remember to love the world and let your fancy flow.